All of us know that nearly 70% of India's population lives in rural areas. But what we don't know is that of the 30% urban population, more than 70% live in emerging cities rather than the mega cities. Now, while everyone in the industry has been talking about where the next big consumption opportunity lies, it in fact lies in what we're calling second centers of consumption, or the rest of urban. We're talking about the Chapras, Balias and Ghaziabad of India. And now I'm joined by the three most powerful marketers in India, Anand Kripalu, Manu Anand and Chittaranjan Dhar. Thank you so much for joining me, gentlemen. I'd really like to kickstart this discussion by talking about all your companies and the journey you'll have embarked from the India to the Bharat journey. And my first question is for you, Anand, on why the time is now to start focusing and investing in these emerging cities, or what we're calling second centers of consumption.
First of all, if you look at it from the policy side and the government side, the investment in infrastructure improvement is actually over-indexed in the smaller towns. So that's the first thing that really, builds the road so that people can get there. The second is there is expected to be an explosion in shopping malls in tier 2 cities. And what that means is that you will have shops. And that means you will have shoppers. And that means businesses like ours and others can provide their products on the shelf. And I think the third thing is that companies are beginning to build infrastructure in terms of supply chain and distribution, very importantly. And as you do that and all these kind of converge, you kind of create magic.
Manu, if I can bring you in at this point, how are companies such as yours focused in ensuring that the 1 lakh and sub 1 lakh populated cities are really the growth meters for, let's say, the next 10 years to come and the real game changers?
Well, I think the entire FMCG sector is very excited by the growth this space has to offer. And just talking around to the other FMCG industry leaders, everyone's really talking about this segment growing at 5 to 10 percentage points faster than some of the urban markets. And clearly all of them see this as opportunities to invest in, A, by building the right distribution infrastructure, but over time starting to innovate and build brands and products more sharply tailored to the needs of this consumer set.
Chittaranjan, if I could bring you in at this point, in these emerging markets or centers, the distribution cost is so high, so you're really trying to grapple with the situation where you have to make them available at a cost that is vulnerable. What are the experiments, challenges you're facing currently while you're trying to get this balance right?
So there are several things across the distribution chain which creates costs. It's not just finally you've got to reach at the lowest cost to the retail point. There are several other elements of cost which could be optimized, which can take care of an increase in cost of distribution in the last leg. Therefore, our approach has been a total cost approach. Our location of factories increasingly are being done with that total cost approach, where we are saying the cost, what is the cost of delivery to the retail in the market? And it is not only the last leg cost. I'm not optimizing only the last leg cost. I want to optimize the total cost. And therefore work more and more with models which help me optimize the total cost. So whether it's in terms of location of my plants, location of my distribution centers, decentralizing more distribution centers, decentralizing my distribution. So there are various many options which we keep looking at and keep refining as we learn more and more about competing successfully in these marketplaces.
Anand, if I could bring you in on, effective distribution models that work in these areas, these regions really.
One of the cost-effective models that many companies have adopted is the hub and spoke model. So you create a hub really in a largish town, and then you have spokes with sub-distributors really in much smaller towns. And actually the cost of incremental reach of this is not too much more than what it is in terms of large urban centers itself. The second thing, of course, is, in every company you manage a portfolio. So you have some brands and businesses that generate cash and profit, and you open up new avenues with businesses that you invest in for the future. So too with distribution. So you have distribution in your large centers, and you open up at a slightly more incremental cost opportunities for the future.
Chittaranjan, if I could bring you in at this point, I believe several companies such as yours are contemplating about coming together with, other companies, to form a distribution chain possibly in non-competing categories. Is that the thought process across the board? Is that a viable model?
Yeah, I think that's a thought which lots of companies are looking at, including ours. So it's something which is happening in a big way, and we're also looking at how we can at least have stockist points and CNF agents, etc., in such areas where they get the scale out of working for several non-competing products and companies.
Anand, would you agree with Chittaranjan? Are you looking at a similar structure where all of you can collaborate for better efficiency?
Well, in many, many ways, I think the way of creating value in the future is true partnerships, synergistic partnerships. I think gone are the days when you believe that the best will happen when you do everything yourself. I think the opportunity to make 1 + 1 = 3 definitely exists. Coming to the point of distribution, one of the biggest barriers to distribution and cost is actually scale. So by coming together, you create scale, and that could have a combined benefit on a large number of companies. So absolutely, I believe that is an opportunity and the way to go in the future.
Manu, what's your view of, reaching out to these regions? I really want to talk about, positioning of brands. Is it important to nurture a carrier brand? I mean, start with that and then look at a value-added portfolio, or do you look at an entire portfolio and carrier brands come later?
Yeah, ideally, if you have a carrier brand that can help you set up a distribution system, or at least carry a distribution system in the early days, it's a great help, because then you can layer on a lot of innovation and then start tailoring your innovation specifically for those geographies. So it certainly helps to have a carrier brand which has already established some element of recall and credibility with consumers in these areas.
I think what is very clear is it's tough to go with just one SKU or one brand when you go and penetrate these kinds of new virgin markets. You have to go with a portfolio. Now that portfolio should include, ideally, a carrier brand that has enough pull that it goes through the entire system. And that in some ways sows the seeds for the distribution system and lubricates the distribution system. Other brands then, bit by bit, can piggyback on that brand. Now that portfolio must include, therefore, obviously the right set of brands, but also the right set of price points. The price points that work in large urban centers, at your kind of corner grocery store in a Mumbai, is quite different from what it will be as you go down the pop strata. And low unit price points, the right rounded price points, the challenges of poor coinage, all those also need to be thought through when you decide your final mix.
The idea is to engineer that, but engineer that where you get the right quantity. You can give something for 2 rupees, but if it does not really take care of the need, which could be a change of taste or a light belly fill, then you've not really given the consumer anything for 2 rupees.
All of you come from having a legacy of a great brand. But how important is that brand really in the context of these consumption pockets that we're talking about? Pricing vis-a-vis brand.
Now, one of the interesting things is, particularly, as you go down the pop strata, and particularly when you get into categories and into the low unit price segments of categories, that consumers tend to buy SKUs ahead of brands. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you have 5 rupees in your pocket and you want to buy a pack of biscuits, and if your regular brand is not available, you are more likely to buy a 5 rupee pack of another biscuit brand than a 10 rupee pack of your regular biscuit brand. So that's how important it is to get the right price points, and that is how important it is to get those price points available in every nook and corner in this country.
Chittaranjan, if I could bring you in, given what Anand has said, if you could throw some light on how, marketers should be looking at reach, the marketing strategy, how products should be positioned on the retail shelf, be it, in terms of POP, packaging, what kind of artwork. If you can throw some light on how different it is in these areas.
I think it's important that the consumer sees your product far more often, because he's unlikely to be seeing your communication as often as an urban consumer sees it. Okay, and that's essentially again a problem of infrastructure in such areas, primarily to do with the availability of electricity and the fact that a lot of above the line advertising or above the line marketing expenditure is focused towards advertising on television. So What I'm trying to say is that the last mile presence, which is on the retail shelf and with the point of purchase material available on the retail shelf, assumes a far greater importance in these markets and would do a lot more to switch a consumer preference towards your brand than relying only on conventional media to do the job. This is not an area where subtle messages may do the trick, or where you can assume that the consumer would, through experience, understand it without the message being very clearly on packaging.
Anand, in a category like yours, which needs to be consumed in a certain format, getting your products delivered in the right condition must be a huge challenge. And it's only going to get bigger as you gain, critical mass in these regions. How are you combating these issues that are really inherent to your business?
Well, it is absolutely a real challenge. If you think about chocolate and a good chocolate experience, it's when it melts in your mouth, which means chocolates need to melt at body temperature. And we all know that for the bulk of the year in India, the ambient temperature outside is much more than the body temperature. So that is the real challenge. How do you get chocolates from our factories all the way down to small towns while it is still in good condition and delivers the eat experience? One of the shortcomings in India in terms of infrastructure is the fact that there is no really good mass organized cold chain that can move products in an unbroken cold chain so that there is no break at all in terms of quality all the way down the pop stream. So what we're doing in our own small way as a business is to try and create an unbroken cold chain, starting from the factory pretty much all the way till the retail store.
Anand, on another note, for a person who's occupying the corner office, you're really surrounded by complexities. At one level, you're looking at premiumization. On the other, you're looking at the urban market, which has some serious, changing trends and habits. And at the same time, you're looking at a region which is probably 20 years behind from where the urban market stands today. Getting them all together is a pretty complex game. So how does a company like yours manage focus?
It's often been said that there is no one India. And we as a company really believe that there are at least three Indias. And we try and have strategies and business models to cater to each of these three Indias. So the first is, at the top end, the really affluent consumers of India, the numbers are more than what you have in Australia as an entire country. And they want the best products available anywhere in the world that money can buy. And they're willing to pay for that. We also, cater to the kind of developing India, or almost the underdeveloped India. And that's where we have low unit price packs. We have opportunities, across all three segments. And we have created business models to actually address each of these.
Manu, if I could have your final word on this entire discussion we've had on emerging cities and the next consumption opportunity.
Well, I think it's by creating separate sub-verticals who are operating in slightly different business models to be able to reach these consumers, more dispersed manufacturing, different distribution models, different way they look at cost, different way they look at P&L, different way they look at consumer communication. So it's really operating with a slightly different mindset, which sometimes gets very difficult to do if you embed it in the core company. Creating separate sub-verticals, I think, is a very good route towards doing it. Well, I think it's the most exciting time to start with. I mean, this is an industry and a segment that's going to grow at a very fast rate for the next 10 years. And yes, the ones who unlock it will be those who start looking at doing things differently, shed some of the old business models, establish new business models to be able to tap into new consumer opportunities. I think it's very exciting times.
Very well said. Clearly, the key takeaway from this discussion is that for all you marketers out there, the time to invest in these emerging pockets of India is now. Thank you so much, Anand, Manu and Chittaranjan. Truly a pleasure to have you on Brand Equity.